This book just felt like Suzanne Collins decided to personally attack me, rip out my heart, and then stomp on it multiple times, where by the end, I couldn't cry anymore because I had already cried and I just felt numb. Oh boy. Oh boy. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Stefania. I am an actress, audiobook narrator, someone who's definitely way too young to be spending all my time reading and knitting. I'm just here to share my reviews with you, my real reviews. I don't even know where to begin with this book. There are going to be many spoilers ahead. I can't talk about this without spoiling what's going to happen because, oh boy. I was always interested in what happened to Haymitch's games because the way that he acts in the original trilogy hints that there's something deeper that we don't know. And I think that was always Miss Collins's intention with Haymitch's character, was that I think she already knew Haymitch's background. She's a good writer. Of course she knew Haymitch's background. But the fact that she didn't reveal it to us until now, I think says a lot. There's something that supposedly Suzanne Collins only writes books when she feels like she has something to say. And I mean, this book could not have come at a more apt time in modern American politics. Thank you. Do you like my book? Hi. It speaks about fascist governments and controlling the narrative and how the media portrays the government versus how the 1% lives. The call is coming from inside the house, you know what I mean? Like, it's fairly obvious. And it's kind of hilarious to me that the people who don't like the Hunger Games or don't like this book you can kind of guess who they voted for, if you know what I mean. But this book sets up fascism in a way that I think is so informative for especially younger readers who I guess these books are more meant for, like middle-aged readers meeting teenagers, middle schoolers, high schoolers. It is a way to introduce the subject and for students or kids to just in general understand literary parallels and what an allegory is and how this whole series, this whole universe, it's not a mistake that it takes place, that Panem is the United States of America. She knew why she was writing this book, you know? One of the interesting relationships to me that develops in this book is Plutarch's relationship with Haymitch, and how Plutarch constantly throughout this book questions Haymitch of why doesn't he rebel or why doesn't he fight back. You know, Haymitch says like, if I could, I would have done this and this, and Plutarch's like, so why didn't you? And he's genuinely asking like, what is holding you back from doing this? And I think that Plutarch in this allegory is kind of like the people who are living in the 1% who recognize the oppression, but because they've never lived it, they don't understand subjugation through fear of violence, through fear for your loved ones, through fear for your community. So it's easy for Plutarch to say like, you can just rebel. There's more of you than there are them. I don't think he's grasping how truly conniving this government is. And this book is the ultimate example. I think Suzanne Collins saw some of you thirsting after President Snow, after Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, and she was like, oh, really? Are you sure you want to go down this path? I think he was crueler in this book than he was in the Hunger Games. Or maybe it just felt crueler because we have now the background of like Lucy Gray and everything that happened during the 10th Hunger Games. Oh, it felt deep. It felt personal. It felt personal, and it was personal after what we know. Another interesting point that I noted that stood out to me was how the government silenced the rebels or actively hurt rebels and the ones that they loved in order to get them to be silent without ever having to lay a finger on them, without ever having to say out loud to the common people, this person is on our watch list. They're much sneakier than that. And it reminds me a lot of history classes I used to take in college about fascist governments, especially during like the 20th century in Europe, also 20th and 21st century in places like Latin America or South America, and how your voice is your most important tool. And I think that it's no mistake that the Covey is a group of people who use their voice to share words. They even say it in the book that the Peacekeepers don't mind when the Covey sings normal songs, but the second that it's a song that has lyrics that are somewhat rebellious or hint at a greater future, that they don't like that. They really don't like that. They arrested Leonard Dove multiple times for it. Using punishment as subjugation is a perfect example of why these people feel so stuck and why they continue to participate in the games, because they feel they have no choice. Because in reality, they don't have a choice. I mean, look at the original trilogy. Everything that Katniss had to go through and lose to even get a hint of a war started. And you know, what is the justification of war? I saw an interesting article about the Hunger Games using the just war theory of when is it justified to begin a war? When is it justified to put your own people's lives at risk for the greater good? And I think that this is a perfect example of how that happens and why that happens. Because the reality is the Capitol was never just going to listen. They were never going to listen to the people. No matter how many people there are like Plutarch or even Effie in the Capitol, they were never going to listen. It's a great example of when Suzanne Collins writes, Snow always lands on top. President Snow truly thinks that there is nothing that can stop him. But the sun also rises. And I think that's where the thread of Lucy Gray, Lenore Dove, Katniss Everdeen, the through line for them being light, being fire, being something that can melt the snow, is a perfect symbol of hope in this situation. It breaks my heart when Haymitch in the epilogue says, like, he did everything right, but he just wasn't lucky enough. But Katniss was the lucky one. Katniss was luckier than him. And that breaks my heart. Oh my God. It's just such an emotional book. Ugh. And also, Suzanne Collins, so many lore drops. Like, this book, if you were ever a fan of The Hunger Games in middle school like I was when it first dropped, holy moly, like the amount of detail that we get and the Easter eggs that, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The Mockingjay pin. The Mockingjay pin that was Maisley's, that Tan Amber made for her, that she never wanted to wear because she thought mockingjays were an abomination, because mockingjays were just another variation of a mutt. But the symbolism of a mockingjay being in and of itself an act of rebellion, where mockingbirds and jabberjays, because the jabberjays got out, then there's this new creation that's being built that eventually became Katniss's symbol. And how in the first book, different from the first movie, but the first book, Maisley's niece, so her twin sister Marilee's daughter, gives Katniss the Mockingjay pin and asks her to take it as a token into the game. The lore of where the pin came from, and probably where, when Haymitch saw that pin again, I can't even imagine the fear, the loss that he's re-experiencing. We get Katniss's parents' name in the first chapter. They're never named in the original trilogy. We never get their name, but now we know that it's Burdock and Astrid. And we learned what their relationship was originally, and that Haymitch's best friend was Katniss's dad. It's no wonder that Haymitch pushed Katniss away when she was being reaped, you know? He didn't want to see his best friend's daughter die. He didn't want to be responsible for being the one to mentor her. And especially because Burdock and Astrid were the last people who really tried to get through Haymitch after his games when he was falling into this deep depression. They kept trying, and it took him literally throwing rocks at them and hitting Astrid on the head for them to leave him alone. And Burdock still died. He still died young. Haymitch tried everything in his power to save his friends by pushing everybody away, and still, there is not an ounce of me that believes that that mining accident was an accident. After everything that happened in this book, it was absolutely a punishment. And I even think to go so far as Prim being reaped in the original Hunger Games book, I think that was intentional. Especially because she looked just like Astrid did. I think it was intentional that Snow wanted someone who reminded Haymitch of both Astrid and Maisie to go into this game and die, and have Haymitch have to mentor her through it. And then Katniss volunteering for her was a whole other thing, because we now know that him saying sweetheart is not condescension. It's because baby Katniss reminded him of Luella, and Luella was his sweetheart. And so it's genuine when he calls Katniss sweetheart every time. Oh my God. Oh my God. Speaking of Luella, how messed up in the head is President Snow to literally get a random girl from one of the districts and alter her and drug her and infect her to pretend to be Luella? How cruel is that, not only for this young girl, not for this young girl's family, but for Haymitch? And he loses them both. And he loses them both. Oh my God. And also that Haymitch saw Katniss grow up from being a baby. Like, he literally mentions her as a baby. And then he has to mentor her to death. No wonder he drinks his life away. No wonder. It also breaks my heart that before these games, or during these games, Haymitch was so family oriented, and he loved his community, and he loved the people around him, and he never drank. He was just he still is like the most empathetic character. He tried to push everyone away even during the games, but he couldn't help but taking people under his wing, and he couldn't help but helping others. And he saw time and time again that every time he helped someone, they died, and he couldn't protect everyone. Oh my God, when Maisie dies and he talks about how he went from loathing her to working with her to loving her as a sister, as real family. Oh my God. And it's even more heartbreaking seeing this perspective. The most we knew about Haymitch's game prior to this was the one scene in Catching Fire where Katniss and Peeta are watching his stream, but obviously they only saw the edited version. I mean, even in this book, they talk about how when Haymitch rewatches his games, they made him out to be a selfish asshole, basically, throughout the entire games, when in reality, he was the most selfless. Everything he was doing was he was just trying to do the right thing, and his empathy would get the better of him, and he couldn't protect everybody. Oh, it's so heartbreaking. Beetee, Mags, and Wyrus being in this, insane. Beetee having a son that Snow basically convicted to death because of Beetee's past rebellion. Like, how conniving, how evil of a person. I mean, Suzanne did not hold back on this book. He is an evil, evil man. And Beetee knew he was gonna die. There was no way he wouldn't. Oh my God, and his death was so violent. I haven't read the original trilogy in a while, but I don't remember it being as graphic and violent as this book was. Like, I remember them mentioning the deaths and things like that, but oh my God, Amper, oh, poor little Amper. His death with the squirrels, and Haymitch going up to his bones afterward and saying, buddy. Oh my God, and Mags and Wyrus. Mags being a safe place for Haymitch immediately. They didn't even know each other, but she literally gave him a hug and he cried into her arms the first time that they met. And how Wyrus was actually so smart and so with it prior to these games. And her and Mags were both tortured, and Beetee probably, were all tortured because of the way that they helped Haymitch. Because they helped Haymitch win. It adds so much more to Catching Fire now that I'm like, I need to go back and read that immediately. Speaking of the cruelty of Snow, if Lucy Gray lives in this man's head rent-free. Like, how long has it been? It's been like 10th games to 50th. It's been 40 years. It has been 40 years, and you are still thinking about this woman because she is so much better than you. She is so much better than you. And how he's giving Haymitch unsolicited girlfriend advice, first of all. He knows how dangerous these women are because their impression lasts and they haunt. For Haymitch, they haunt in a somewhat positive way. For Snow, they haunt in a negative way throughout the rest of their lives. And I really think that was the purpose of adding in the whole poem of the Raven by Edgar Allan Poe in different snippets towards the end of this book. The Raven talks about a man being haunted basically by the memory of a woman named Lenore. And I think it was a perfect parallel for Lenore Dove, who continued to haunt Haymitch. And we see him that he even says like he has nothing to live for, but Lenore Dove's memory will not let him die without completing her promise of never letting another sunrise on the reaping. So beautiful, by the way. So beautiful, that imagery of never letting a sunrise on a reaping again. And the way that she died, that Snow made sure it was through Haymitch's hand that she died. And they were so close to happiness. They were right there. They were kissing, they were hugging, they were chatting. They were gonna run away, and Haymitch blames himself because he didn't check the gumdrops. How was he supposed to know that he held her in his arms while she died, and then for weeks went looking for her because he couldn't accept that she was dead, until he saw Lucy Gray's stream of her singing a literal funeral song that we see Katniss's dad sing for Maisley and the other dead tributes. That song coming back, I was like, oh my God. Like, we knew that music in District 12, obviously with the Covey there, was going to be big, but that the song that Lucy Gray sings was her own funeral song, basically, because if Burdock is singing it at a funeral, we can assume that it's maybe a funeral-like song. And that Lucy Gray is the reason Haymitch held on to his promise to Lenore Dove, thus allowing Katniss to win. Suzanne Collins, the woman that you are, I can't. The geese, they weren't random at the end of Mockingjay. He literally never stops thinking about Lenore Dove. He mentions that she ages with him through his memory. Like, every time he talks to her ghost or whatever is haunting him, she has aged with him. Whereas Snow, Lucy Gray, is the same age that she always was when he knew her. And I think that's because he felt he owned her in that moment, whereas Haymitch wanted a life with Lenore Dove. And so they were living their life, growing together. Let's talk about Haymitch's drinking. Again, so when he used to work for Hattie, he said that he never really drank. He didn't like the stuff, whatever. And it became, he just couldn't be awake without it. And where that stems from, and his kind of acceptance of giving up life when Katniss meets him for the first time. Oh, Suzanne, when I get a word with you, it's over. It's over. Also, something that this made me think of is like, so again, we see how Katniss and Peeta perceive Haymitch's games. How many other victors or how many other tributes attempted to destroy the games that we don't know because of how the game makers edited the games for the public? How many other people tried so hard or tried to save each other before Katniss or before Haymitch, even before Lucy? Like, it's just the propaganda that goes so deep in the Capitol. Even thinking about how Haymitch has so much empathy for Proserpina, whatever her name is, Drusilla, and no, he doesn't really have sympathy for Drusilla, but for Effie, and his empathy for them because they don't know any better. And he even says that. He's like, they're not doing this to be malicious, they just genuinely don't know anything else. Because her sister happened to be the one assigned to Haymitch. The moment where Haymitch comes back and Effie's left alone in a room with her, and Haymitch says, I'm not gonna hurt you. And Effie says, I never thought you would. I knew from the moment you helped me pick up my makeup box. Effie. And that she's the one who's always there every year on the reaping to help Haymitch through the day. And how that plays out in the original trilogy. I'm just thinking about moments where Effie tells Haymitch, like, I liked you better when you were sober. And the weight that carries, rather than just a dig at, like, him being annoying when he's drunk, but actually, like, you used to be such an empathetic, caring person, and look at what these games have done to you. I think that carries over into how Effie cares for Katniss and Peeta. She's still complicit in the games, but I think Haymitch kind of opened her eyes into what she's actually serving and what it actually means for the reaping. And how Haymitch had to wait 24 years to never see another sunrise on the reaping. Every year he waited, He waited. He didn't know what to do. He was frozen. He didn't know how he was going to keep his promise, so he decided he was just going to keep living until he did. And Katniss eventually came along and did it for him. She was the luckier one, where she was able to take it all the way. And how many other people did there have to be before Katniss? I mean, we already know Beetee. We already know even Plutarch helping. We know how Haymitch tried, how Ampert tried. God, I hate you, President Snow. You are just... Coriolanus Snow, you are on my kill list. I know you're already dead, but you are on my kill list. I swear to God. Again, I think that... I don't know if it's just me, but this book feels so much more violent than the other ones. We've already talked about Ampert's death and how brutal that was, and how letting a 12-year-old get demolished to punish someone else, that's why they can't rebel. That's why they're afraid to rebel, because they know what will happen if they do. And even Haymitch knew that in the games everyone was dying because they were with him. He knew that Maisily only died because she was with him. There was no reason for her to die. She was in the final four. And they were gonna split up. They were gonna split up because they didn't want to kill each other. And a bird comes and attacks her. A bird that was programmed to kill her. So Haymitch already knew that he was in danger's way. And he even said through his victory tour, he was licking boots. He was kissing ass. He was doing everything he could so that the people at home wouldn't die. Because he knew, oh my God, Snow saying, enjoy your homecoming. It's on site, Mr. Snow. It is on site. And him coming back to see his mother and little brother burning alive. The symbolism of fire, I don't have a fully formed thought, but the symbolism of fire, that Haymitch is the one with the striker. And he is trying to catch fire, and he can't catch fire. His family dies in fire. Katniss becomes the girl on fire. Haymitch had to strike it for Katniss to catch fire. Yeah, so Maisily dying, Ampert dying, poor Lulu. Oh, poor Luella and poor Lulu. Luella dying from an accident. I really thought she was going to be in the games, and I was like, how is Haymitch going to kill her? She had died even before the games had begun. And President Snow, in all of his cruelness, drugged a little kid from a different district and made her die a cruel death. And that Lulu just wanted protection from Haymitch, find Haymitch, and that he wouldn't let them have her body until they forced him. And he didn't know where her body went because he didn't know if they would even bother burying her because she wasn't supposed to be there. And out of all of the deaths, the last death of Welly getting her chopped off and Silka holding her head. My God, if that doesn't get you to start drinking, I don't know what will. Oh, maybe the love of your life dying in your arms, that could help. Or your mom and your brother burning down in a building, that could help too. But he left her to try to go help. And she still died, and she tried to protect herself. There was the dart that was in Silka's costume. She was tiny. Haymitch didn't want to kill her. Haymitch wanted to die. Haymitch just wanted to ensure that she would live. And still, nothing he could do was ever enough. He was the most, and proved to be the most compassionate and the most empathetic character in this series, probably. Thinking about even the moment when Silka's crying. It is his greatest enemy in the game at this point, and he drops her a chocolate. And that he can't say no to Ampert. He can't say no to Welly. He can't say no to Lulu. He can't say no to District 9. He can't. It's within his heart to help everybody. The cruelty of the Capitol is immense and detailed and torturous. And it's hidden in plain sight. It's hidden in entertainment. It's hidden in destroyed narratives. It's hidden in accidents. Basically controlling the narrative. And how President Snow gets away with it every time until Katniss. We haven't even mentioned how Haymitch wasn't actually reaped. He had an illegal reaping. Because he tried to help somebody else. Again, with him being the most compassionate and empathetic, he was reaped illegally because he tried to help somebody. It doesn't get more cruel than that. It doesn't get more insidious than that. I don't know what else to say. Like my heart feels like it's been stomped on. And like there's no feeling better, because I guess I could go back to the original trilogy, but it still doesn't feel good. It still, oh my god, it still hurts. But I do want to go back to the original trilogy, seeing how the Easter eggs parallel back to the books, seeing what feels new and what feels different. But yeah, this was everything that I wanted from this book. It was entertaining. I finished it in 2 days. It was heartbreaking. It was so good for me as a Hunger Games nerd to like get all this lore. I don't know what to do now. All right, I will catch you next time. Let me know if you read this as well, if you're gonna read it. Let me know your thoughts below and what you felt the most heartbreaking moment was, because I don't think there were that many not heartbreaking moments in this one. And I'll see you next time.